This podcast is made possible through donations from listeners like you and our partners at Tall Man Equipment, where they pride themselves on equipping their customers with the tools they need to get the job done right. They are dedicated to set the standard for quality, convenience, and reliability. At Tall Man, your opinion is important to them. Rate and review any product or tool you've used on their new website at tallmanequipment.com. Line 11 Clothing Company, making apparel for our first responders with a positive message to patriots that you can be proud of. A proceed of the cost goes to helping our foundation ignite the fire for father engagement. Give them a follow at Line 11 Clothing on Instagram. And last but not least, Monzingo Knives. Each knife is created with craftsmanship that only a tradesman could provide. Find them on Instagram at Monzingo Knives and get your American-made Monzingo knife today. Welcome to the Show Up Dad podcast. This has been created for hardworking fathers. At the Show Up Dad, we recognize that fathers providing for their children is certainly important. But when men truly understand their unique role and gain the knowledge and skills to be great fathers, they can transform and impact future generations. Today, I'd like to welcome Stephen B. Poulter. He's a PhD. He is a renowned Los Angeles-based clinical psychologist in the private practice with over 30 years of experience. He is the author of The Father Factor, The Art of Successful Failure, Father Your Son, and most recently, The Shame Factor. Such an honor to have you coming back on here, Steve, and thank you, brother.
Hey, David, it's being at home, man. I love what you do and what the podcast and empowering fathers, because being a father is a privilege. A lot of guys think it's, an obligation, but it's a privilege. And with that, today we're going to talk about boundaries. And Dave, I'm going to take 5 minutes to kind of give you the quick notes or the shorthand notes on why boundaries are so important. And particularly as fathers, how to teach our kids to have boundaries internally. So in the world, they function at their maximum and reach their potential. How's that sound?
Sounds like a plan, brother. Go ahead. Take it away.
Okay. I'm going to run with this. Boundaries, I use the analogy, are like Mammoth Mountain and the weather. Now, right now up in Mammoth, we're in the winter here. There's 18 feet of snow. We go up there again in August and there's no snow and it's 100 degrees. Mm-hmm. And some people would say, using the analogy of boundaries, well, that person doesn't love me. There's no snow. Mm-hmm. Or I'm not good enough. There's no snow here. Versus boundaries are like the mountain. They don't change. You establish them and they're constant. What changes is our emotions, and that's the weather. The weather is our emotions. Like, in this last week, the East Coast had a blizzard, but that doesn't change the foundation, which is your core self. And part of that is having boundaries with yourself, with the world, and the people you interact with. And there's 4 parts to boundaries, David. There's emotional, physical, literally physical, relational, and spiritual and personal. And using the analogy of the mountain, we have to build that within us. And by the way, everyone's got boundaries, David. Mm-hmm. Everybody has them. The question is it a faint line? Are they demarcated? Are you able to have boundaries and interact with people? Or some people overcompensate in the workplace, like they're told by a supervisor to do something, but because they feel so, I'm going to say vulnerable, they get real aggressive and they take their boss on, or they, mouth off and get terminated. That's having weak boundaries or undeveloped. I don't like the word weak, underdeveloped boundaries. Okay. So people ask me, I ask all the time, hey, Dr. Steve, how do you have boundaries? I get guys in their 20s getting out of college. What are the boundaries like? And I said, there's the emotional. There's the emotional, and physical isn't just physical in the world, but who your body is, how you feel about yourself, and your health, and how you take care of yourself. That is a boundary. And relationship boundaries is the ability to say yes and to say no. And there's a saying in psychology, until you learn how to say no, you don't know how to say yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Until you learn how to say no, you don't know how to say yes. That is a relationship boundary. That's why you see kids, Dave, when your kids are younger. No, 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 no.
You're
They're
right.
learning. Yeah. No. Okay. Gotcha. That's great though. You're saying no. And that's how we establish relationship boundaries. I'm going to go back to emotional in a minute, but relationship boundaries, a lot of times fathers and daughters, there's kind of this murky water and doesn't get developed. Then the daughter goes out in the world seeking validation, but her boundaries aren't established very well. And she can get herself into all sorts of emotional relationship trouble, or, go down the wrong road, if you will. You get involved with somebody who exploits her because she doesn't know how to say no. And lastly is the spiritual personal boundaries. That's who we are, David. Okay. And that gets back to having empathy, acceptance, and understanding for ourselves. Empathy is I can't hate on myself. Like, I'm not perfect, because a form of perfection is self-loathing. I'll say that again. When you think you have to be perfect, you're really rejecting yourself. There is no perfection. We know that spiritually. It's about learning and growing. And that's empathy, embracing who you are. Accepting is, I'm in this field. This is what my life is. I accept that. I don't wish to be somebody else, but I accept my circumstances. And understanding is the ability to think of others. That's a big one.
Yeah,
That's
wow.
a big one. That's a big one. This is all boundaries, David. You have those three in place. You're able to emotionally not cross the line. I use the analogy, boundaries is like playing tennis, David. You got your side of the court, you hit the ball over the net to the other side. But many times as dads, we run over to the other side thinking we're being a good dad to help them hit the ball back. We're not helping them. We're not helping them. In fact, we're telling them they're not capable. I tell parents, you may sit with your son or daughter while they do their homework, but don't do their homework. Sounds easy. Second grade. Okay, this is a true story. This last fall, kids apply to college for this upcoming fall. I have parents who write the college essay. How do you think that goes? David,
wow.
How do you, I'm not making it up. I wish I was exaggerating. Every year I pull my hair out. I'm like, well, I want him to have a good essay. Now you can edit it. That's okay. I get that. Like, okay, let me check your grammar or whatnot, but you write it. And David, as much as I'm gonna have a glass of water today, that's how many times I've had people do that. And what it tells the son or daughter is you're not capable.
Wow.
And good boundaries, fathers, dads, is we have to stop ourselves. By doing that, we stay on our side of the court. We have to own 100% of our 50, but it teaches our child how to become competent versus inferior. That's the power of boundaries. Emotionally, physically, relationally, and spiritually. So David, there's my 5-minute rip.
Man, no, that's important that you just said that in that 5 minutes. There's so much truth to everything you said.
Yeah.
I could see where the dangers of helicopter parenting.
Oh, I tried, David. I tried not to use that word. Helicopter parenting. I always tell them, check yourself. Your boundaries aren't good. You're violating your child. What are you talking about? I'm looking out. No, you're not. You're violating them. Because if you need to be a helicopter, you clearly haven't done what you need to do for them. Teach them boundaries, how to say no, how to be responsible, and also let them learn. And you and I both know boys need to fall off their bike, literally, to learn how to ride one.
Yes.
Don't hold the bike. Let them ride it. Metaphorically.
Now, you said something that I thought was really interesting, because I'd been thinking about this myself and just exercising it in my relationship with my daughter as well. How does that acceptance and self-worth play in not having good boundaries?
Okay, there's a thing called social media right now, where a lot of teenage women, teenage girls get caught up in being validated by how many likes or who's following them or on Snapchat. Having boundaries is knowing your self-worth is inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not outside of you. It's not your looks. It's not your wealth. It's not your education. It's who you are inside. Are you kind? Are you loving? The golden rule.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy and understanding. That's where boundaries come in. And for daughters, as dads, accepting our daughters and empowering them is teaching them how to say no.
Mm.
Not yes. Teaching them how to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And that avoids, I hate to get into it, date rapes, sexual exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's guys out there that are just they don't have boundaries and they encroach on women.
Mm-hmm.
And teaching our daughters how to say no is empowering them.
Mm-hmm.
In the workplace, for instance, I had a client call me she was on vacation at Christmas time, and she's around her family members, extended relatives, and she felt a couple of the neighbors were really creepy. And I told her, if they try to touch you or do anything, scream like you're getting stuck with a hot fork.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that made sense to her.
Yes.
Like, it made sense to her to have boundaries that way. Okay.
Mm.
Now her father's passed away, so I understand why she's struggling with that. Okay.
Yes.
But David, teaching our daughters to be empowered starts with our ability to teach them how to say no.
Wow.
Not yes. You have to say no to know what you want.
And that totally makes sense, because when you say no, if you really look at it and dissect it, man, there's freedom in that. When there's freedom to be able to say, no, I don't like this,
Exactly. And that strengthens your soul. Your soul gets stronger. You get more connected. Saying no for a lot of times, a woman gets viewed as a bitch. No, she's not going to be violated or a victim. And all this, the Me Too movement, fundamentally, it's right on, because they're trying to teach women how to have boundaries, how to say no. Now, it may cost her. You start her young saying no in elementary school, middle school, high school, college. By the time she gets to the workplace, she's like a velvet covered brick, smooth, comfortable, but she's got that backbone like a brick. No, I don't do that. No, I'm not going to compromise. No, you are sexually getting weird with me. We're not doing this. That's how we empower our daughters. Now with our son, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, I had a past guest, Gianni Simone. She's a model, actress, movie star, all these things. Beautiful young lady, and she talked about how she had to learn acceptance in who she was and self-worth. Right,
David. That is boundaries. In psychology, having empathy, acceptance, understanding. Now, I have some people that are born into major wealth. I'm talking like, incredible. And they feel guilty. I always say, God gave you a gift. Accept it. And Gianni, I saw the podcast. She has the gift of influencing people in a positive, loving way. What a gift.
Yeah.
And I tell clients, accept what you've been given. And many times it's the good stuff they have a hard time accepting.
Why is that?
It gets back to shame that we don't think we're good enough. I hate to say it. I'm not using I really believe that shame is our disconnection from our best self, our higher self, from God, from whatever we call the divine. It separates because we think we're not worthy. We're not worth it. And that's why we say yes to stuff we really don't want to do. I got teenage boys one kid, the guys are driving around crazy. And then my client says, I really want to get out of the car. Yeah, but I didn't really know how to say it. What do you mean? Hey, dude, come on. I need to go home, or I got to go. I can't do this. Well, they won't like me. Yes, they will. They'll respect you. And I tell teenage boys, you say no. After a while, they respect you because they know you tell the truth. And same with women, and like Gian on the show, she's had to learn how to accept her gift. And not having boundaries is we let people tell us who we are. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's problematic, David. That's where we get in a lot of trouble. And I want to go back to the mountain,
Mm-hmm.
and the weather.
Okay.
People are like the weather. They change with the seasons. But having that core self, it doesn't change. And that's having boundaries. It allows you to function, David, within a safe area and be more effective. Like you have boundaries with the show, times you show up, things you do, your career, the podcast, your family. All that requires boundaries, knowing where you stop and start.
Now, is it safe to say that now that I'm thinking about it and you've hit on all these points, I see boundaries as kind of like a moral compass.
You're right, David. You are right on. I mean, countries go to war over boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we got this issue in Eastern Europe right now with the Ukraine and Russia. It's all about boundaries. Do they cross that line literally
mm-hmm.
as an act of war, or don't they? On a personal level, it's the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries. Everyone has a place where they stop and start. To your point.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because I recognize that, I see that, and in my life, I want to teach my daughter, right? Because I don't want some boy, her like you talked about, you know what I mean? Just really pushing an issue when she says no, and then she can't stand up for herself, and then winds up doing something that she never really wanted to do in the first place because that boy doesn't respect boundaries, you know what I mean, or whatever.
You know, and David, it's a domino effect. When dads, moms have an incredible role. I'm talking about, we're trying to empower dads how to be more involved.
Yes.
I always tell dads, I know what to say to my teenage daughter. Talk about how often does she say no? Bring up the conversation on the ability to say no. And she's gonna look at you like, what are you talking about? So I lean into the camera like, Dad, seriously, what's wrong? Can we just go to lunch and not talk to me? Okay, I can do that.
Right.
And don't think I haven't heard that, okay? And I go, how do you say no to your girlfriends? You get a blank stare. Oh, why? Well, I don't want to upset them. I hear that one a lot, David. And with guys too. You go, honey, if you're saying no to something with your moral compass, like I don't want to experiment with drugs. You know, I don't want to vape Friday night and they pass it around. And I don't want to do that. Deep down, they respect you. They may pressure you, but deep down they respect you. And that's what we have to drive home to our daughters. We'll get to sons in a minute, okay? Where our daughters, they learn how to say no. They're going to attract good girlfriends and good boyfriends. They're going to attract it.
Man, that's interesting because, there's right now in the world, there's going around, the law of attraction, right? You attract who you want to be with or be around,
David,
you know what I mean? With positive energy and stuff like that, right?
And listen, I couldn't agree with it more. It's true. So guys will say, hey, I really want to attract a great woman. Well, what are your boundaries with women? Where do you stop and start with women?
Wow.
And they look at me like, is the hour up yet?
Right. No, and I can see because it's deep, right?
Yeah. What kind of women do you attract? There's a reason why. Yeah.
It forces them to look inwards. What are you attracting?
David, to look inward, boundaries is your sense of self, where you are with God, yourself, and the world. The big three. Okay? It's been since the beginning of time, since we've been on this planet. And having boundaries, you and I could say having a sense of yourself. And I like the word boundaries because people kind of get that. And boundaries isn't so much the staying in your lane as it is understanding your lane. Yeah. What's in your lane. I'm not worried about you staying it, but you understand it. Because if you understand it, then you know when to leave it and when to accept it, when to bring somebody in, when not to. That's the key. Do you understand it?
Now, I wanted to ask you this because I see this even in my career now. I'm a full-time instructor at the Cal Nevada JTC, where we're raising and training the best linemen coming out in the country, right?
Congratulations, by the way, David.
Thank you.
Listen, they got they got the Heisman Trophy guy there with you. They got the
Right.
Sean McVay lineman.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
It's the truth.
So I wanted to ask you, Steve, one of the things we're teaching our guys now
Mm-hmm.
is the understanding of the why, right? And
Mm.
that's a big movement. Okay. Everybody
Ooh.
wants to know the why. And that's what we're training these guys. The reason why you do
Mm-hmm.
this is why, and what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, and what you can do. Now, with that being said, is there a point to where understanding and having that knowledge where you start wanting to push the envelope? Do you ever see that?
Yes. You know, on
You get what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. On a professional level,
Mm-hmm.
why do I um why do I need to listen to my supervisor? He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I hear that, I go, okay, stop. You are in trouble. You're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
A, he does know. B, what's in you that wants something from him?
Mm-hmm.
There's something in you that you want something from him. Otherwise, you wouldn't discount him.
Mm.
Okay. And boundaries are also how to control our impulses, not to
Okay.
overeat, get to bed on time, get up, go to the gym. I mean, tell me where it doesn't fun. You can call it discipline.
Okay.
Discipline. Like I try to get to bed at a certain time. When I don't, I bear the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm having boundaries to myself. No, I don't need to read anymore. You know, or watch something or talk. That's a boundary. I need to have that with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or taking care of my health. I got a lot of men, David, in my practice, and I'm sure you know too.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take care of their teeth. I'm like, okay, really? Yep, really. It's one of the leading causes of heart disease in men. Because
Wow.
that bacteria, you swallow it, and guess where it goes?
Mm-hmm.
Straight into your heart, in your blood system. I
Hmm.
know. Having a boundary is having discipline to take care of yourself. Because if I take care of myself, my kids intuitively pick up on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Intuitively. I don't have to tell them. They see me going to the dentist taking care of myself. It sounds trivial, but it really, Dave, then the father factor in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
they're able to take in instruction because they've learned how to say yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Many times I find oppositional employees, okay, who was critical of you growing up? Who demeaned you? Who never listened to you?
Hmm.
And David, it's like jumping out of a boat, you're going to hit the water. You're not going to miss.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, with the lineman, you guys, when your supervisor says something, you have to, not have to, you choose to accept it. And over time, you learn. And there's a way to talk to somebody and ask them questions and gain information without offending them or
Mm-hmm.
being confrontational. And Dave,
Yeah.
you're good at that. You're very good at that.
Well, it took me reading verbal judo. you know.
It took me, I'm with you. Being a former police officer, I had to learn early on my ability to read people, have boundaries, but to understand them. Understanding, remember that was the big three:
Mm-hmm.
empathy, acceptance, understanding. Was like driving with the brakes on or the car's going 50. It's that
Hmm.
mark of a difference. When you understand people, then you can speak to them.
Huh. No, it's exactly, and it even goes forward even to how we deal with our own spouse, right? Because our kids are
Oh,
watching us,
let's
right?
come home now. Yeah, let's come home. Okay, having boundaries is you come home and we're tired and irritable, and our wife asks, rather than snap at her, I check myself. No, yeah, honey, I kind of had a rough day. We can talk about it later.
Mm-hmm.
That's having boundaries with yourself. And Dave, the one thing on this show I want to go over and over is ultimately it's you having boundaries with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I got to keep myself on my side of the tennis court, not be throwing hand grenades over my wife's side.
Right, right.
I'm having a bad day. Okay, then go manage it. Go manage it. Call me back, right? Metaphorically.
Yeah, right.
But keep going, Dave. Ask me some more. I know you got more questions for me.
One of the things I've been doing, Steve, because
I chose now to not do the things in the past that have caused my family great pain, right? That's growing.
And yourself.
Exactly. So one of the things I've done now is, in the past, I recognized where I was dealing with the situation. So I started to withdraw. Now that withdrawal, my wife took it as I did not like her. I didn't want to be around her, all this stuff, but internally, I was dealing with stuff that was going on from past traumas or whatever, or how that day or whatever, like most men do. And I was trying to protect them in a sense, right? I thought I was, but in reality, I was causing damage because I was creating this void to where my wife, she wanted to be intimate with me, right? Because intimacy is intimacy.
Right.
And
absolutely.
She thought I didn't want nothing to do with her. So now going back, I've changed that. I recognize that. I changed that. And now what I'm doing is I'm letting her know, hey, I am not okay. This is what's going on. And we're having that open dialogue, that open communication,
David, that's gold. Okay. That gets back to the 4 parts to masculinity. We'll do this another time, David. There's 4 parts to masculinity. Our emotional intelligence, our physical intelligence, relational, spiritual, and personal. What you did relationally, you had a boundary. You explained, hey, I'm having a bad day. And it's nothing personal. I got to go. I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk. Boom. Okay. Thank you, honey. See, we don't communicate. Many times when we think we're protecting, really protecting ourselves from feeling our frustration.
Yep.
We're not protecting anybody.
Wow.
I know.
Man, you hit the nail right in the head with that one.
We're just throwing the ball down the field here. David, when I hear people say, I want to protect my daughter or son from this, no, you want to protect yourself. Own it. That way you can really address it.
Now, Steve, I wanted to tell you one of the goals I've been talking about and teaching and just practicing in my family is teaching my children to make good decisions for themselves, right? And what we've been doing is we're helping them be more self-aware with the decisions they are making. And I think that's a part of the whole boundary that we're talking about right now.
Absolutely. And as dads, we have to stay on our side of the tennis court.
Right.
Now, we have to, boys learn from experience. Operative word, helicopter parenting, we're telling the child, we'll experience it. We don't want you to experience frustration or pain, so let me help you. Wrong. I mean, they're not running in onto the freeway. We're talking relationships, like middle school. Dave, how old's your son now?
I have 8 and 6, the 2 of them.
Okay. At 6 years old, which one's 8?
The middle one, Lucas, he's the redhead.
Yeah.
He's 8.
Okay, yeah. A 2nd grade going on to 3rd grade?
3rd grade, actually.
Yeah. Okay. In 3rd grade, I tell dads, you want to hear them out. Like they get mad at somebody or they feel unfair. We want to give our sons a foreign language called emotional intelligence. And that helps them have a sense of self, which is a boundary. And parents, dads I don't want my son to be abusive. Then teach him boundaries. Because if he can control himself, he has no problem understanding others. And he won't abuse. If he controls himself, he won't abuse others. Absolutely. And at 8 years old, reading's picking up, homework's picking up. But as they learn, like we see their spelling words are incorrect. Okay. So are you good with that? Okay. So what happens if you don't get a good grade? This might happen. Okay. Maybe we ought to redo this. What do you think? You don't do it for them. But if I say, a lot of parents will say to their kid, do you want to go to summer school? Nope. Okay. Then you need to do this. I hear that more with high schoolers. If they don't want to go to summer school, then you got to get your grades up. Boys do well with that.
Okay.
Also, okay, I'm going to jump into this with our daughters. There's a documentary about Jeffrey Epstein called Filthy Rich. It's really, it's very, very, very powerful. I don't suggest it for light reading. Okay.
Okay.
I watch it because people ask me about it. And one of the things that jumped out to me were all the victims, the girls, had one thing in common. No one was monitoring them.
Wow.
Teaching our boys boundaries helps them to stay connected to their parents. And so they're monitored, and they monitor themselves, and they allow you to parent them.
Mm-hmm.
And these girls had no one monitoring them. Hence, they also had, because of that, they had no boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
They had no boundaries. I know it's an extreme, and well, I don't know if that's not extreme or not, but that situation, that's how it was so prolific.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of those girls did not have someone watching them.
Mm.
And they couldn't watch themselves. They didn't know. They didn't understand it. So with your 6 and 8-year-old boy, teaching them boundaries, they learn to monitor themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back like, wait, that's not right. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. That's really weird. I don't want to do that. That's how boys think.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't do it.
Wow.
Really good stuff.
No, it is. And man, it just goes to show how powerful our influence as fathers is. I mean, when you say there's no monitoring, where was the father at?
And, and people will say to me, well, the dads are dead, prison. Yes, and they were living at home with their dads.
Mm-hmm.
And they're living home with their moms. And their moms weren't drug addicts. I mean, we're talking Florida. We're talking, West Palm Beach. We're not a very nice area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a wealthy, there's a billionaire area, and then there's a nice area. The nice area is absolutely appropriate. It's not some inner city thing where there's a lot of other issues going. But these girls did not get that type of attention growing up, because giving our kids, teaching them boundaries in a sense of self, David, takes a lot of effort on our part.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time it's watching and letting them do something, and then kind of helping them get back on the bike of life.
I think also too is getting them to recognize the motivation behind the decisions they're making.
Right on. Absolutely. And the consequence, I say boys do better with consequences. Okay. Natural occurring consequences are so powerful for kids. Parents tell me, my son has 15 homework assignments due. I go, let the school deal with it. They will fail him or whatever, and he'll have to deal with it. And the parents are like, wow, no, let natural occurring for boys really work.
Mm-hmm.
And with daughters, knowing that you care about them, that is a very strong consequence.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one, because girls are more like, do you like me? Okay, what's the consequence? Where boys are, what's the consequence? Do you like me?
And it's so true,
isn't it? Dad, what's the deal? Do you still like me? Yeah. Okay. With a daughter, yeah. With the daughters, do you like me? Yeah. Okay. So what's the consequence?
And it's so true. Going back to our daughters and stuff like that, mm-hmm. That they want our approval.
David, I remember hearing this years ago. The best way to get your daughter's approval is give it to her.
Yes.
Just give it to her. Honey, now you're going to do things, we always hear this, you're going to do things I don't like, but that doesn't change my approval of you. I want you to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to learn, because that way you learn how to say no. I can't learn it for you. Like, you're teaching these linemen how to save their life, David. You can't do it for them. They're going to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They're learning from the best, learning from you, which is fantastic. But they have to learn how to say no to taking risk and not following procedures, because they think it might be a shortcut. I can't imagine there is, but
Oh no, there's definitely shortcuts in our trade.
Yeah, I can imagine, Dave.
A lot of times what I've seen, just because we're talking about this, is these guys were showed a particular shortcut, and they were never told why. They just took that as it was gold, that was the correct way. So now they've developed these bad habits, and those bad habits, I'm sure you've seen that pyramid chart where accidents happen. It starts off and it just keeps going and going and going until you get to that point where it's catastrophic, and they start building on these bad habits over and over and over again. And it's just, it's wrong,
Yeah. And David, and that's part of this whole thing we're talking about again. I'm going to go back to the 4 parts of teaching our sons and daughters boundaries, how to have emotional boundaries. I'm going to go back. That's a big one. Emotional boundaries is learning how to read what's going on inside of me. It's inside of me. No one's causing me to feel sad. I'm choosing, there's something inside of me that's making me sad. Well, I hope this was going to go better. Okay. I can't blame that. It starts in me. That's having emotional boundaries with people.
Self-awareness.
Very empowering. Because there's a word, self-awareness, David. Nothing is not being codependent. Codependent is, I need you to approve of me for me to feel good. So I'll do anything I can to get your approval. And now we're in a free fall into the Grand Canyon.
And it's crazy too, because I've seen that even in my relationship with my wife. I depended upon her being in a good mood or feeling good because she had an ailment. She was diagnosed with Lyme. So anytime she didn't feel good or was having a bad day, I would get upset because it made me feel uncomfortable and it made me feel like I couldn't do nothing for her. So I felt inadequate and I made it about myself versus being empathetic and saying, hey, honey, what do you need? How can I help you?
David, right on. There is the other side of the tennis court. Empathy. She doesn't feel good. I wish you were feeling better, honey. But I think as sons, young boys, it sometimes taps into our mother factor. When our moms were sick, the world didn't feel safe.
Yes.
And I tell guys, you want to have a great marriage, leave your mom at home. Don't bring her. Yeah. Want to have a great marriage, leave your mom at home. Oh yeah, that's really funny. No, it's really true. Ask wives how their mother-in-law works. And David, what you did for your wife was you saw her independent as your wife. And because she was not feeling well, you weren't in danger on a visceral level. Really powerful.
It is. It's crazy how we tend to go back to our own childhood and whether it be our mother and see similarities there or even similarities with our own father. I like to do that with my daughter. I like to trace back similarities. And one of the ways we do that is like, we'll ask her, what do you like about, say, for instance, she came to me and talked about this boy, which is really awesome because for the first time, I built that trust with her to where she feels comfortable to tell me that there's a boy who likes her or whatever. And she asked me my opinion. Right. So now that she's doing that, I ask her, so what do you like about so-and-so? And is there any similarities that you see there that you like, and she starts, discussing like things she likes about him. Like, okay, do you see daddy doing that stuff, and she's like, wow. And she starts making the connection.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Oh, wow. My daddy does work out. My daddy is, very rambunctious or whatever, I mean? She starts seeing the similarities in the people she's looking at that she has an attraction to, you know what I'm saying?
Boy, David, that is an elevated discussion in my book. Okay. That is really fantastic. I mean, a lot of times girls don't even have that insight. Young women, maybe not till college or post-college. But the time that your daughter hits college, she'll have a very clear idea of what she wants and doesn't want. Now that's personal power. Dan, that gets back to people say, how do I make a sense of myself? Empathy, acceptance, and understanding. Empathy, understanding who you are, and compassion for others. Acceptance of your circumstances in life. Acceptance is okay for me to learn. That's really what self-acceptance is, David. I get, to boil it down, all the great theorists, Carl Jung, Freud, Carl Rogers, they all said, having compassion to learn, you hold the key to life. You hold the key to life. And Thomas Edison said, when they asked him, how'd you feel about taking, 800 times to learn how to get the right formula for a light bulb? Well, I had 800 life lessons.
Wow.
I believe sincerely, that's one of his greatest contributions was his ability to accept learning. Didn't view it as failure, viewed it as learning. I really believe that. Aside from his genius, I really feel like part of his life mission was to teach us that learning breeds miracles
Mhm.
and can change the world.
No, and it does. I mean, and it's
Look at you, Dave. Since I've met you, I'm witnessing you just growing like a redwood tree. Sincerely,
thank you. I appreciate that.
genuinely, in your ministry, your mission, empowering fathers. That's all part of acceptance.
Mhm.
If you didn't accept Dave, there's no way this is happening. No way.
Hmm.
Can't do it.
Man, and I've been noticing that too. Like I've been talking about this and I recognize it in my home is acceptance, right? Starts at home.
Oh my gosh, David. Right on. If it's not there, it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, there are a lot of boys around us as your sons get older, start doing baseball and soccer. You'll see fatherless boys.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean their dad's gone or dead or not involved. They're not connected. And our jobs is to accept those boys. Because when a boy feels accepted, he's willing to live life.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't feel accepted, he's always trying to get acceptance.
Yep. And then you start compromising too when you're trying to get that acceptance, correct?
David, doesn't go the right direction, and you see it in high school when boys drop out versus boys that stay in school. Part is they feel they're accepting of learning and growing.
Wow.
Big deal.
No, it is. It's totally, it's all enmeshed and
it's all connected. So Dave, I want to go back to the mountain and the weather. As a dad, our kids are like the weather. They're good at change. We're the mountain. It doesn't matter if it's 18 feet of snow or it's 112 degrees in August. You're still the mountain. That is having a boundary. You're not changing with them. You're there as they can bounce off you. And because you have boundaries, it helps them to have boundaries.
So we got to be that constant. We got to be that anchor, correct?
Yes, because many kids pick up on, we don't have to tell them, when we feel like we need their emotional support, that kid becomes the parent. And that's why it's important to have boundaries. I get a lot of parents, they tell their kids all their problems, like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That's not for them. You got to have boundaries, whether it be going through a divorce or financial strain. I mean, within reason, but not as an emotional support.
Wow.
No, that's a big one, David. Big one. If there's anything I was going to say today, it's probably what's gotten me to really work on the next book. If we have boundaries, we're not using our kids as our emotional network.
Wow. Yeah. And there's so many people who do that. I mean, even my wife, her parents, they had a pretty awful divorce, and they pretty much just used her against each other.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
It's sad. Let's touch on that, blended families and divorce. Dad, no matter what your marital status is, you're a dad for life, right, David? It doesn't matter. You're a dad for life. Number two, I've had some really ugly divorces this last year, David. Makes me never want to do any more custody, mediation.
Yeah.
But I tell dads, if you're bad mouthing their mother, you're bad mouthing 50% of your child.
Wow.
Because they're 50% of her.
Wow.
Boundaries, can't badmouth her. Well, what if she talks, awful about me? So you don't need to be that person. And your son or daughter will appreciate your ability not to degrade their mother. I don't care what she says. That is gold.
Yeah,
that is gold.
It is.
Okay, you get remarried. You have stepchildren, and you're the dad. You're not the biological dad, but you're in the role of a father, and their father might be a really troubled soul. I tell dads, don't weigh in a judgment on him. Don't. Just be supportive and quiet. Be supportive of the kids, and don't voice. You can talk to your wife about it privately, but not to the kids. That goes a long ways.
I thought it was interesting that you said using your children as emotional support. I mean,
Oh,
gosh darn, that's
David, it is so prevalent. It is mind-boggling. That's why when I reached out to you, I want to talk about boundaries, because that's probably 50% of my work with young men leaving home, where they feel like they're emotionally responsible for one parent or the other. Dude, talk about a ball and chain. Guilt, but that's part of leaving home and separating and individuating.
Yes.
Now, there's two types of family, Dave, on a spectrum. There's enmeshed families over here. On the other end is disengaged families. Well, they're like hotel guests. They live in the same house, but they don't really know each other. And over here, they're enmeshed. We're like, there's only one opinion, one ego, one thought, like a lump of mashed potatoes.
Yes.
Ideally, we're in the middle. There's a little bit of closeness and a little bit of distance in the middle. But a lot of families err on the emotional side because of the fear of abandonment. Like, I don't want you to leave me, because they haven't had those boundaries developed, David, to be a freestanding adult.
Wow.
Freestanding adult. And having children does not make you a freestanding adult. You do. You've got to do it.
It's crazy that you said that, because I see the correlation with my own family. When my brother passed away in 2020, in 2020, my parents were so enmeshed with him to the point where it was, I assume it was pretty hard on his wife, okay, to now where he's gone, they didn't even have their identity. I mean, they don't even know who they are. So in a sense, it's a good thing that he's gone, because now they're having to deal with each other. They're going to have to rely on each other to get through this difficult time.
Yes. And David, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your brother, genuinely. And I know you told me that before. And grief also forces you to develop boundaries.
Yes.
Because your mom and dad have to be freestanding adults. You're not going to allow them. You've got your family. You have empathy, but you're not their crutch.
Yes.
You're not the crutch. No, the only crutch is inside, and their spiritual connection and their sense of hope and their moral compass. And like you said, your brother passes, and people call that the empty nest syndrome sometimes.
Yes. I
always hear that as I have done nothing personal to develop this. I relied on my child. I know that's a little heavy. I'm not trying to be.
No, it's true though. It's so true, and it's crazy that you say it like that, because I mean, you see it even in shows like Yellowstone.
Oh my God. Yeah. And David, I see it all over TV, these different shows, Yellowstone, other shows, movies. And I'm just like, well, I understand they're writing it because the people writing it haven't individuated. They don't have those emotional boundaries in their family. Many guys get married as a way of getting off the ranch. But the problem is, they don't get off the ranch. They bring their wife to the ranch.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. I'm like, no. You can come and visit, but you can't live here metaphorically.
And I think we more men do that more than they're willing to admit, David, because I did it,
David, I did it too, to an extent. We all did it. But once you realize that doesn't work, boy, your marriage gets better.
Yes, absolutely.
I cannot tell you how many women have come to my office. Go, I'm second string in my marriage. I'm like, oh my God, who's first string? My mother-in-law. I'm like,
right.
Or I'm third string behind the mother-in-law and the career, or fourth string behind mother-in-law, career, kids.
Wow.
Not good.
Not good at all.
Not
That's
good,
a recipe.
David. I'm telling you, couples counseling always ask, so on the depth chart, where do you rank? I love you now. The football analogy. Like, okay, on the depth chart, where do you rank? You won't believe the answers I get.
Wow.
I've had some women say, I don't think I'm on the list. I go, come on. I speak from grace. Don't speak from anger. Dr. Poulter, we haven't had sex in 5 years. Okay, you may not be on the list. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I can't argue with that. I've got nothing on that one.
No, and it's crazy because sometimes I know a lot of, for myself, okay, speaking from my perspective,
Uh-huh.
I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was almost like I fell in this like
Autopilot.
Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden I'm being told what I'm doing. And it's like, well, I never meant it that way. And then what's the first response is to get kind of defensive and be like, no, you're making this up. I never did that. I don't know what's going on. And then you just kind of just totally just destroy them, demoralize them, because we're not even being empathetic to what they're feeling,
Yeah. And David, I ask guys, if you're having problems in your marriage, are you living on your parents' ranch, or have you and your wife created your own space? Now, a lot of guys say, well, we're living on her parents' ranch. Can't live on either one of them.
No.
You have to create your own island. It says in the Bible, leave your parents and cleave and connect with your wife.
Yes.
In the Greek, it was connect, bond with your wife and create a world. That doesn't mean you can't love and support the extended family, but you have to create your own home. And that's having boundaries, David, going full circle back to that. So with your little boys, teaching them how to say no. Something as simple as, do you want Chinese food, Mexican food, or sushi? I don't know. Okay, well, then you're not going to eat. Make a decision.
I like that.
And I tell parents, don't pick your kids' clothes out. You can give them 3 options, but I have some parents that pick their kids' clothes out and the kid's 12 or 13. Like, what are you doing? Well, I want to help them. You're not helping them. You're controlling them.
Man, and that makes total sense because and I just to correlate this, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I saw this as something that was really interesting the other day. Just giving options, right?
Yes.
One of the things that was brought to our attention is, one of our apprentices, right? He said, when I'm telling a lineman yada yada to do this or whatever, he tends to look at me, tell me, I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
Yeah.
And he'll throw it back at me or whatever. And one of the instructors we had there looked at him. He's like, oh, well, are you giving him options? How about approaching him from a different aspect to where you're actually bringing him something that he can use? Because in the heat of the moment, if you're telling him, no, you can't do this. And it's the same thing. And I tie this back with our children or even our spouse. If you're telling them no, human nature is to get rebellious and say, don't tell me what I can and cannot do. Right. But instead have the option there for them and be like, here, you want to use this? And then it's kind of like it diffuses that whole situation. And they're like, oh, thanks. Yeah. And take it. You know what I mean?
David, that's brilliant. I tell parents, like, don't get a power struggle with your teenager. The discussion, like, well, have you considered this? Here's some ideas. Have you thought about this and this? I got one kid that wants to leave high school, go to junior college for a year, and then go to college. I go, okay, so have you considered, if you do this, this will happen. Boys get consequences. But if we only give them a monorail, one option, they're not going to get that. Now, I tell parents, don't give them too many options, but 2 or 3 is good. Like with clothes, simple stuff like your 6-year-old. Okay, honey, here's 3 outfits, pick one. Okay, I want to do that. And after a while, they learn how to do this. Okay, do you want to take your bath first or brush your teeth? I'll brush my teeth. Okay. Tomorrow, do you want to take, after all, they start to make choices. You're teaching them they can make choices. So they hit high school and they've already got that paradigm. They've already got that mechanism working, David.
Wow.
It starts a little, I swear to God. Yeah.
And it's simple.
Yes.
Think about it.
Listen, okay, clothing, like with girls. Okay. I used to go close shot with my daughter. She's now 28. And because her and her mom would just be, and I go, okay, Madison, you have to pick 3 outfits out. Because she was the other way. She couldn't make a decision to save her life. I'm not leaving here until you buy 3 things. David, she literally tested me once. No, I sat in a department store, and I think I was good. I wanted to lay on the floor and go to bed. It was like, I go, honey, we got to pick up 3. She finally did it.
Wow.
It was one of those moments I knew. Now other girls by 30, okay, then I'd say you only get 1. Okay, but for my daughter, she was so indecisive. She said she used to put stuff on her Amazon in her shopping cart. She had like 40 items, but couldn't decide on which one to get. And then she'd come back, sometimes it'd be deleted because it was like 30 days later. This is a true story. And so I would make her, okay, when we go, you have to come up with 3 items. Wow. And one of them cannot be a handkerchief. Okay, that does not count. A scarf is not. We're talking clothing items. Before she went to college, it literally, I remember sitting in a department store in the middle of the summer, like, I'm watching paint dry. Okay, I'm going to watch paint dry. But I had to make a boundary with her. I had to keep my word. I had to keep my word.
Man, and it's awesome, it's awesome to see that you kept your word. You were that rock. You were that mountain that you talked about at the beginning.
Yes.
Throughout the show, you were the constant there. You know,
and David, and I tell dads, let's say in a divorce, they don't see their kids that often. You're still the rock. You're still there emotionally. There are a lot of kids with their dads physically and have no relationship. So don't buy that myth. All right. You can be a constant, reaching out emotionally. There's so many different ways to connect with your kids. And when they're with them, boundaries and options, like you said with that guy, boundaries.
Well, Steve, once again, man, thank you so much for your wisdom, brother. And we're going to have to do a part 2 of this because this is so big. When's your book going to be coming out?
Well, okay. I have got to set a boundary with myself and get the proposal. I've got it. I just got to put it together.
Okay.
And get it sold. I think it's already sold. I just have to do it. And the name of the book is Men's Health and Masculinity, a 360 overview.
Okay.
How to be a man.
How to be a man.
And everything we just talked about, David, this is the book. And it starts with boundaries.
Hey, man, I need to get that from you.
Done. And when I do it, I'll give you 100 of them. Pass them along when I get them. Okay.
Right on, brother. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your knowledge, brother. We appreciate you. And
thank you.
I'll be talking to you soon.
Okay. God bless, David. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Okay. Bye-bye.